Elena Torres moved like the wind that brushed across the ridges of the Colorado mountains. Quiet, deliberate, almost invisible. In Ridgeview, a town so small it didn't even have a stoplight. She was known only as the wildlife photographer who preferred sunrise over conversation. Locals saw her hiking with a camera slung across her shoulder, capturing images of eagles, foxes, and creatures that thrived in the silence she seemed to crave. To them, she was simply Elena, the woman who kept to herself and never spoke much about her past. But beneath that calm exterior lived a story no one dared imagine. 5 years earlier, she'd been Lieutenant Elena Torres, one of the first women ever to serve as a Navy SEAL in active covert operations. She'd led missions across deserts and oceans where decisions were measured in heartbeats, and one mistake could cost a life. And only did. The memory of that night still echoed in her every breath, shaping the quiet she now protected like armor. The mountains had given her peace, or at least the illusion of it, until one ordinary evening, that fragile stillness cracked. A robbery at the local bar spiraled out of control. A single gunshot split the night air, and in that instant everything Elena had buried began clawing its way back. She knew the sound too well, the weight of thessalence that followed. What no one in Ridgeview realized was that the woman who took photos of hummingbirds could also take down an armed team in total darkness. And the past she buried wasn't finished with her yet. Before we go deeper into her story, take a second, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Because what happens next changes everything. It began with the sound of tires on gravel, subtle, almost respectful, as if whoever it was didn't want to be noticed. But Elena noticed everything out here. A single misplaced sound stood out like a gunshot in a chapel. At first she dismissed it. Delivery trucks sometimes turned around near her cabin, but the black SUV appeared again the next night. Same hour, same slow roll past her driveway before disappearing into the darkness. She told herself. She was imagining it. Told herself that after years of scanning rooftops for snipers and tracking movements through night vision lenses, her mind was conditioned to see patterns that weren't there. Still, when the third night came, she sat in the dark by her window, camera in hand, her finger resting not on a trigger but on a shutter. The flash never came. The SUV lingered, engine idling, lights off. Whoever they weren't lost. The next morning she drove into Ridgeview and told Sheriff Daniels. He smiled politely, the way small-town officers do when they think someone just needs reassurance. "You've been alone up here too long," he said. "City folks get jumpy in the woods." Elena nodded, thanked him, and drove home in silence. But inside, something sharp and familiar had awakened. A quiet hum of readiness that she hadn't felt in years. That night, sleep refused to come. Every creak in the cabin sounded like a footstep. Every whisper of wind felt like someone exhaling just beyond the door. And then in the darkness behind her eyelids, Yemen came back, the smell of diesel, the metallic taste of dust, the scream of rotor blades above a burning village. Her teammate Halt bleeding out as she hesitated, calculating risk instead of trusting instinct. 1 second too late. One decision that had carved a hole inside her no mountain silence could fill. Now as the black SUV returned for a fourth night, Elena understood ghosts don't always come from the past. Sometimes they drive right up your road and wait for the lights to go out. The town of Ridgeview came alive once a month for something it called Culture Night. Local artists filled the community hall with photographs, paintings, and handmade crafts. Elena rarely attended, but that evening she did. Her work, a series of shots capturing a family of mountain lions in the snow, hung quietly in the corner. People admired the images, complimented the lighting, the patience it must have taken to capture such moments. Elena smiled politely, offering vague answers. Patience was something she had learned in deserts, not forests. Across the street, the Ridgeview Savings Bank glowed warm against the cold. A family walked in. A minute later, a sound shattered the evening calm. Sharp, metallic, unmistakable gunfire. Screams followed. Instinct overrode thought. Elena's heart didn't trace, it slowed. Her mind separated chaos into data. Entry points, escape routes, firing angles. Through the window she saw the precision. 2 covering the lobby, 1 controlling the civilians, ex-military, efficient, trained. This wasn't a desperate robbery. It was a coordinated strike. Then came the sound she dreaded. The trembling voice of a young deputy, shouting for everyone to get down, his weapon drawn, finger tense. Elena's stomach twisted. She knew that sound. The sound of fear disguised as authority. She stepped forward just as his shot went off. Wild, uncontrolled, and a woman screamed as she fell. On mistake, the same kind that had haunted Elena since Yemen. Without thinking, she moved. She slipped across the street, low, fast, invisible to anyone not trained to look. The robbers turned toward the noise, distracted by the deputy's mistake. Elena used it. A single strike to the first man's wrist sent his gun clattering. A sweep of motion disarmed the second before he even realized she was there. Controlled, efficient, non-lethal, but absolute. The bystanders saw it all. The still quiet woman who photographed owls had just moved like a soldier. Within minutes the chaos ended. One robber fled. Towered down. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. But Elena didn't hear them. She was already walking away, blood on her sleeve, the weight of old instincts heavy in her chest, and across the street, unseen, the black SUV idled, watching, recording. Her cover, what little remained of it, was gone. The video hit social media before sunrise. A shaky cell phone clip. 30 seconds of chaos ending with one clean motion. Elena disarming an armed man with the precision of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. By noon it had 2 million views. Headlines called her the photographer hero. The town called her brave. But the men watching from half a world away called her something else. Unfinished business. 48 hours later, her name appeared on an encrypted message thread among ex-contractors from a disbanded private military group. They remembered Yemen differently. To them, Elena's hesitation wasn't human. It was betrayal. Their operation had been more than military. It had been profitable. A cover for an illegal arms network that her team unknowingly destroyed. Millions lost, partners killed, and in their ears she was the reason. By the third night, the black SUV was gone, replaced by 2. One near the forest trail, another down the old service road. Elena knew surveillance patterns. They weren't watching anymore. They were staging. The hunters had arrived. The cabin became her fortress. She moved with methodical calm, sealing doors, marking blind spots, loading a go bag she hadn't touched in years. Every motion brought flashes of memory, hands steadying Arifel, Holt's voice calling her name before the explosion. The split second she hadn't fired because she doubted her angle. That hesitation, the one mistake, had haunted every choice since. At the back of her closet, behind a false panel, lay the weapon she had sworn never to hold again. Her service pistol, black, cold, perfectly maintained, as if it had been waiting for her to remember who she was. She ran her fingers along the slide, the weight both familiar and heavy with consequence. Outside, wind swept across the ridge, carrying the distant growl of engines. They were closer now. There would be no time for explanations, no warning for the townspeople who believed she was just a quiet photographer. The world she'd built on peace was collapsing under the weight of the past. She couldn't bury. One gun, one mistake, and the men coming for her were proof that some debts, once written in blood, never stopped collecting interest. The first thing Ridgeview noticed was the silence. Power gone, lights dead. A blanket of darkness spread across the town like a closing fist. To most, it was just a blackout. To Elena, it was the opening move. She stood by the cabin window, eyes already adjusted to the dark, pulse steady. Through the reflection, she saw faint green glimmers moving between trees. Night vision goggles, suppressed rifles, controlled spacing. This wasn't chaos, it was choreography. She had expected them. For 2 days she had prepared for this moment, memorizing angles, marking every line of sight, planting diversions. Now the mountain that had once offered her peace became her ally. When the first man breached the perimeter, she led him. His movements were clean, professional. She waited until he crossed the threshold, then triggered the decoy light. A split second of confusion and she was already behind him. Her strike fast, final, silent. Further down the ridge, another operative whispered into a radio. Alpha 1 clear. His words became his mistake. A tripwire, invisible in the moonlight, snapped. The explosion wasn't loud. It was disciplined, contained, but it sent panic rippling through their formation. Elena moved through the darkness like it belonged to her. Every step was memory, every breath a calculation. This was the world she had tried to forget, and yet it felt like coming home. Then came the voice, a young one shouting through the static. Sheriff's Department, drop your weapons. It was Deputy Reed, the kid from the bank. He'd come alone, too brave, too naive. The mercenaries turned toward the sound, weapons raised. Elena froze, recognizing the sound of fear that had once been her own. The same tension in Hall's voice before the explosion in Yemen. History was repeating itself, and she refused to let it. She broke from cover, sprinting toward the gunfire.